Now, when you vibrate at a frequency of peace and let God be God, you start to get better. Even in the hospital, if you get sick and you have this positiveness in you, I am leaving everything to God, your body heals itself quicker. A person who just gives up, oh, I want to see all my grandchildren, I'm going to die now, you'll die very quick. You have to stay there with a positive mind. Lord, I leave everything. Your body fights itself. It has the built-in mechanism. A very good morning and welcome, a very warm welcome to all our Trinity members, our family everywhere around the world. Thank you for joining me this morning. I pray that you'll have a blessed morning with me, that God will begin to enlighten you in areas that you never thought were possible. Thank you once again for all your financial support, for paying your tithes, for being faithful. It is only because of your faithfulness is it possible for me to be able to share with you these things concerning the spiritual nature, your spiritual nature and God's influence over your life. There's nothing more important in this world that we need to nurture than the human spirit. And while everybody is taking care of the physical needs, it is very rare that we find that there are people who spend time and effort making sure that the spiritual nature of all God's children are well nourished. So this morning service, I pray that we will supply more nourishment for that beautiful spirit that God has placed in you. I'm going to give you, by the way, don't forget we have communion at the end of this service. But this morning I'm going to give you a detailed understanding of a small part of how this body has been magnificently engineered by God. I mean, it could not have happened by accident. And as I take you through these things, I want you to embrace the magnificence of God's engineering. I endeavor to have you in awe of wondering how from a distance, over a period of time, has God placed something so magnificent on the earth that just keeps working like clockwork. So let's take a delve into a few things, but at the end of it, that's one of the things that I want you to pay most attention to. God's magnificent engineering. The second thing is, because you know these things, you'll start to realize how the devil uses God's own design for you against you. And how you yourself destroy God's engineering within you and takes away the beauty of life for each person. So let's first look at the place in which the human spirit or character resides. I've shared with you much, but I don't want you to get lost, because I'm going to break this down as simply as possible so even children will be able to digest it. Look, what I'm about to talk to you about is complex, but I'm simplifying it so that you are able to digest it. And when you do, you'll be able to see and recognize God's beauty in every human being. You'll be able to recognize how the devil turns this beauty against each and every person. Let's look at our the house of our spirit, the DNA structures. And I want you to watch a small video clip so that it best expresses what follows from what you see. But let me just mention to you that, when we learn about the DNA in school, or when I've spoken about it, we didn't realize, or I didn't touch on these things, but there are different forms of DNA. There's the B DNA, which all of us know about, which we know and recognize the design when we see it. Then there's the A DNA, there's the H DNA, there's the Z DNA. All these things live coherently inside and forms part of our essence, where our character lives. Wow, it just blows your mind. But watch this clip.
Let's start at the beginning with bDNA. Yeah, bDNA comes first. There is an A DNA, but it's not the first one. This is the double helix that we all know and love. Well, that's not actually what our DNA looks like. At all, really. For one, if you stretched out all of our genetic material, or our genome, it'd be a little over a meter long per cell. And most of us are less than a couple meters tall. So in our bodies, yeah, things get packaged up a bit. DNA's double helix is twisted up and bound by proteins to keep it neat and organized in the cell's nucleus, and then whenever its genetic information is needed, other proteins pry it open and read it out. But also, the exact base pair composition of a sequence of DNA can cause slight changes to its structure. Depending on what pairs you're looking at, things can be straighter or more curved, for example. So the bDNA double helix is more of like an average. It's close to what's actually there, but there's room for things to get real weird. As we noted, one of the early X-ray crystallographers working on the structure of DNA was Rosalind Franklin. And well, she actually described two structures which she found formed at different humidity levels. She named them A and B. Watson and Crick's model was based on the B form, and that turned out to be the default one in cells, so we're stuck with B being first. But there's room for A DNA to shine too. This is what you get when you take B DNA and kind of scrunch it down. It's shorter, wider, but there's still a right-hand double helix. So we've established that bDNA is right-handed and so is aDNA, and they are always twisted in the same direction. DNA can twist the other way, though. It can be left-handed, and it looks like kind of a mess. When the bases get flipped relative to their usual position, DNA's backbone gets all out of whack. In fact, this left-handed form is called zDNA because instead of making a nice smooth ribbon, the backbone zigzags. Yet this messy backward helix seems to serve an important purpose. See, when a cell needs to read or replicate a strand of DNA, it has to unwind the double helix to get at the base pairs, and all that twist needs to go somewhere. Think about what it's like trying to untwist tangled cords. If the ends aren't free to rotate, the twist just runs along down the line. DNA has lots of enzymes to help keep its twist under control, but having the DNA itself twist the other direction also seems to help ease things up. But wait, because we can still add more strands. I'm talking about four-stranded DNA. You know how your shoelace has a little piece of plastic at the end to keep it from unraveling and make it easier to lace up? That's called an aglet, and chromosomes have those too, though they are not quite for the same reason. They're called telomeres, and they protect the ends of our chromosomes from damage. Rather than just trailing off when the gene runs out, they have long stretches containing large amounts of the base guanine. And when four guanines line up just right, they can form a four-stranded structure, a G-quadruplex. Whenever a cell divides, these telomeres get a little shorter, and when they get too short, well, the cell decides that its time is up and enters programmed cell death. That's a normal, healthy process. You don't want cells to keep going if their genomes or integral machinery are old and damaged. So while there is a protein that can maintain telomere length, it's mostly implicated in cancer. And actually, G-quadruplexes help stop it from working, so they maintain the overall health of your cell.
Let's admire firstly that what we are being told here is that if you take a single strand and stretch it out, it's 1 meter long in each cell. And we have over 30 trillion cells in our body. And now you multiply that by 1 meter, so that's 30 trillion meters of DNA strands that is housed in every cell in our body. That's how long it is, 30 trillion meters. Now if I take a huge cord and 30 trillion meters and we try to wrap it up, it will get tangled firstly. You won't know what's what, which end is where, because it will stretch around our globe so many times. So just imagine the magnificent design of God, that He took that amount of string and coiled it perfectly to give instruction for your body to carry out different functions. This is mind-blowing if you get inside of what I'm trying to say. You know, in order for each DNA to unlock the code, in other words, for each cell to do its job, for each part of the DNA to do its job, it has to first be unwound. And so with this amount of tangled DNA threads that are inside of you, chromosomal lentil threads that are inside of you, to unwind it is going to be a mission. But God placed another DNA type, the Z DNA, so that it winds the other way to unwind your current DNA, so that at the time when it's needed, it can perform a function. For example, make proteins or enzymes to do certain things in your body. This, I cannot express to you how magnificent this is. And you know, scientists have this audacity to say that all this design is by pure accident and as a result of some big bang that took place. By the way, the Big Bang, I explained to you exactly how that started. You might see a video reference at the bottom of the screen. Go and click there and watch how God has put everything into its place. Now, since each and every inch of how you made serves a distinctive purpose, moreover, it houses every person's character in it. And it's so magnificently designed. Its architecture cannot be mimicked, even if they try. And it begs one to start thinking about, if that simple structure of a human body God has taken so much time over to make it function so well. Every place, every part is put in that particular position to do a certain function. Do you think that the entire being, that the spirit that's inside every entire being, that the soul that inhabits will just have no purpose? That you are here just by accident and God doesn't really have a way out for you. I mean, He can untangle a DNA strand. Is it not possible for you to start thinking that if you just leave it to Him, that He could untangle any web that you seem to be trapped in? Because He is the divine controller of everybody and everything. So instead of trying to unwrap certain things yourself and getting stressed and worried over, is it possible for you to imagine just doing the best you can, and instead of contemplating too much with worry, just allow God to be God, to unravel this hole that you might be in? In fact, the time for you to seek His face more and be more enthusiastic is when you are caught in a tangle, in a knot. Because that's the time God's ingenious work and magnificent plan can be revealed. But most people, when they are in trouble, they don't seek the spiritual. It's like they cannot concentrate on anything spiritual when their lives are entangled so. But the converse applies. Shut the world out and absorb the spiritual, so that the spiritual can do the unraveling. And you know, a piece of advice for anybody going through anything. I find that, when things are okay, people start to log on, they start to watch the sermons diligently. But when things start to go wrong, it seems like they miss 1 week, they miss 2 weeks, and sometimes they abandon it altogether. And yet, ironically, if they turn that around, they could leave their issues and problems and get an escape route quicker than doing what they're doing at the moment. But listen, you cannot talk to people unless God is inside and He leads them. So if you happen to go through something or are going through something, now is the time to attach to Him more than ever before. Having said that, let's move forward. Now, we come to another place where we see a four-stranded DNA. This is not that double-stranded. Four-stranded DNA, and we're going to talk to one of the most important parts of the chromosome, and you're going to get familiar with this term. It's called telomere or telomere or telomeres. I don't care how you pronounce it, but that's the word. Now we're going to go into so much detail about this, so I want you to have your ears pricked so you understand the purpose of me going through this with you. Now, on the surface, there's a small part at the end of a DNA chromosomal strand. The end part is called telomere or telomere. It's like, as you will see later on, it's like a shoelace, but at the end it's kept so that the shoelace doesn't open up. There's a cap at the end of the shoelace. Now, telomere is something similar to that. And at the end, that's the part that is in a cell that is responsible for making new cells, which make proteins like enzymes to help your immunity, to help your liver to function, insulin. All these things are made by the telomere, which is able to replicate. When old cells die, telomeres make new cells so that these cells can produce the protein. Have we got that? Now, there's also a stop signal, because when your body starts to just keep making new cells without stopping, then those cells multiply and grow and become a blob, which we call cancer or tumors. So in order for that to be prevented, the telomeres must have a stop signal. And we have an instrument in our chromosome, a node of sorts, that stops. It's like your body just knows you don't need to make any more, so it sends a signal to the telomere, stop making more cells. And so that's what it does. So let's read a full cap of what we're talking about. The DNA is a genetic code that contains the information for structuring and functioning of our body. It's like the hard disk in a computer that contains all the information for the programs that run within the computer. Our DNA is a long thread of double helix that is packed in the form of chromosomes. There are 23 pairs of chromosomes in human cells. The end parts of the chromosomes, now you can look at that, what we are talking about, the telomeres. In the picture is called telomeres. Their name derives from Greek telos, which means end, and meros, that means part, the end part. And they are literally the end part of chromosomes. Telomere ends serve to protect the DNA. They are often compared to plastic protective tips in shoelaces that protect a shoelace from unraveling. At the same time, telomeres play an important role in protecting the DNA and keeping it stable. Human cells start at conception with an average telomere length of 15,000 base pairs. So pay careful attention to what I'm about to say and what you have just read. So when your baby is in your stomach, you have 15,000 base pairs of these telomeres in each cell. And by the time the baby is born, the base pairs are reduced to about 8,000. So while the baby is in your stomach, the cells are growing and reproducing at such a fast rate that within a period of 9 months, the telomere base pairs are used up. So at birth, you only have 8,000 base pairs left in you. So you start off with that figure. And as you grow older, and as your telomeres, you see, every time a telomere makes a new cell, it becomes shorter. So the end of your shoelace, for example, becomes shorter. So as time goes on, every time telomeres make a new cell, your base pairs become short. Let's continue reading so that you get a full picture. During the embryonic period, we lose an important part of our telomeres due to the high cellular replication rate. I just explained that to you. We lose almost as much telomere length as we are going to lose during our whole of our lifetime. At birth, the average telomere length is 10,000 base pairs, and I said 8. It's around there. The average is between 8 and 10,000 base pairs. That's left after you started off with 15. At 20 years of age, the average telomere length is about 8,000 BP. So in the first 20 years of your life, as you're growing, 2,000 base pairs die off. And so your telomere now is quite short. Now pay attention. We keep losing, according to this article, and this is a scientific journal, we lose 35 to 150 base pairs per year until we reach a level of less than 4,000 base pairs, where the chromosomes get unstable and the probabilities for serious health problems and death increase exponentially. So let me just share this with you, if you didn't put it into perspective yet. As your telomeres get shorter and shorter, and when you only have 4,000 base pairs that make up a chromosome, it's hard for your telomere to produce new cells. And if you can't produce new cells, then you can't produce enzymes, or you cannot produce vitamins. Your body produces you cannot produce those things. And if you go at a rate of 150 base pairs per year, for example, from the year 20 of age, when you reach 43 or so, 23 years, you reach the 4,500 base pairs bottom line, which means that you cannot produce enzymes anymore. You cannot produce essential products for your brain to function, like serotonin, and all these things that your heart needs, your immune system. It needs these enzymes, it needs these proteins that your cell makes. And when your telomeres are too short to make them, then you are in need of medication. Then you start to take your supplements to help your body from the age of 43 onwards. And this is why when you reach that age, you find your bones start creaking, your body starts aging, your skin starts to get older looking, because your telomeres are too short to create new skin cells. For example, you start to become prone to getting sick more often than when you were younger, less healthier now when you're older. So it's all to do with the shortening of the telomere. Now, If you go at 35 base pairs per year, you will be able to keep a nice healthy body for the next 100 years. And so it's important that you don't use 150 base pairs a year. Instead, you start using something like 35 base pairs per year. So what's the recipe for using less base pairs compared to more base pairs? I'm going to take you through that, and if you really want to know how to live the best possible healthy life where you don't get sick and you don't cripple your own self, then please pay attention to what is coming. So, I want you to watch this little video clip before we move forward.
Protein synthesis is the process by which proteins are formed in biological cells. Proteins carry out all the important functions of a cell, such as transport, structural support, chemical reactions, cell communication, and protection from harmful bacteria and viruses.
Okay, so what causes you to lose so many base pairs every year? First, let's look at an article, another medical article, and it says that multiple factors activate this mechanism. In other words, to increase the size of your telomere so that it doesn't die off quickly, doesn't get shorter. The first thing is vitamins, and then antioxidants. You see, free radicals in your blood, in your body, speeds up the use of telomeres. In other words, it makes it shorter quicker when you have oxidants, free radicals inside your body. And I already shared with you that when you have too much of oxygen is a free radical machine. So ironically, the more you breathe in oxygen, the quicker your telomere dies off. And that's why I always shared with you, long distance marathon runners and people that really exercise a lot and breathe in a lot of oxygen at fast paces, their skin becomes very saggy. They look older quicker. And so it's many other things that you poison your body with that shortens the lifespan of the telomere. Your diet. And then they're saying in this article that multiple factors activate the mechanisms: vitamins, antioxidants, to take away that, how you eat, omega-3 fatty acids, exercise, well, not overdoing it as I mentioned to you, and nutraceuticals have been associated with longer telomere length and telomere re-lengthening. So there is medical intervention for lengthening of the telomere. But wait a minute. Now, when you lengthen the telomere by medical procedure or medical intervention, there's a risk, because you are not able to stop it. I shared with you that your body has a clock. When you make too much cells, your telomeres are given a signal to stop. But if you put something in your body that will lengthen the telomere synthetically, not naturally, then there's no stop signal, which means that the telomere can keep making cells, although it's nice and long now, but there's no stop signal, which means that if it keeps multiplying cells without knowing when to stop, it starts to make tumors, and people start to die of cancer. And so there is just no way medically for people to lengthen the telomere by synthetic means, by medical means, without compromising their ability to, or their health and safety. There's another article I wanted to take note of: discovery of potent telomerase activators, unfolding new therapeutic and anti-aging perspective. So they're saying that your skin will last longer, you'll look younger, and your body will function better if they are able to lengthen your telomere. But let's read the article. Product B, a herb nutraceutical that contains telomere support, compounds and antioxidants, has already been suggested to be a potent telomerase activator, although no long-term test data are currently available. So they don't know, or they refuse to say what the long-term effects are when they synthetically, would medical intervention help the telomerase to get longer. But let's read what it says. Nutrient 4, this is a test they did, contain the following: vitamin C, magnesium, and a whole lot of other amino acid mixing, glutamine, and so forth. These are nutraceuticals that we mentioned. They make a type of tablet or a type of injection that they want to put inside a human, so that if their body is not producing enough cells and the telomere is too short, they want to lengthen it, but they don't tell you that there's potential tumors that can result. So let's recap for a moment. Telomere length shortens with age. The rate of telomere shortening may indicate the pace of aging. Lifestyle factors such as, these are the things now that cause the problem for shortening of the telomeres: smoking, lack of physical activity, obesity, stress, exposure to pollution, etc. They can potentially increase the rate of telomere shortening, cancer risk, and pace of aging. But I want you to highlight that stress part there for me, if you don't mind. If the telomere gets shorter, the body can produce an enzyme called telomerase. So it does this naturally. So when your telomere gets shorter, it makes on its own, it makes an enzyme called telomerase, which helps it to grow longer. And this is done all naturally. You cannot put something in there so that it causes the telomerase to get longer. It must be done by your own body, naturally. If you try to do this by any other means, the chromosome cells will keep dividing by mitosis. We learned that in school. And the overgrowth of cells is what a cancerous tumor really is. These couple of videos will explain what I mean. Watch.
What are telomeres? Telomeres are structures made from DNA sequences and proteins found at the ends of chromosomes. They cap and protect the end of a chromosome like the end of a shoelace. In almost all animals, from the simplest to the most complex, telomeres are required for cell division. With each cell replication, the telomeres get shorter and shorter until they're so short that your cells can no longer divide. When cells no longer divide, tissues age. However, telomeres can be rebuilt by an enzyme called telomerase to restore cell division. If you think we've found the fountain of youth, think again. If a cell keeps dividing uncontrollably and overcomes the limitations of telomeres, a cancerous tumor can form. This is why telomeres are so important. In healthy cells, they achieve the necessary balance between limiting cellular lifespan and your own longevity and keeping cancer growth at bay.
A normal cell will divide only when it receives a chemical signal telling it to do so. These signals are interpreted in the nucleus, and the cells reproduce their genetic information and divide into two identical daughter cells through a process called mitosis. Cancer cells do not obey this rule and will divide even if they do not receive appropriate signals.
Now we already know that telomerase makes enzymes, and enzymes are actually proteins. And a protein is made up of, wait a minute, and stop codons. Stop codons means the instruction to stop, and it's made of mRNA. Now, let's watch this video quickly.
Translation is the synthesis of a protein from an mRNA template. This process involves several key molecules, including the small and large subunits of the ribosome, tRNA, and finally, the release factor. The process is broken into 3 stages: initiation, elongation, and termination. Let's see the process in action. Eukaryotic RNA, the substrate for translation, has a unique 3' end called the poly-A tail. RNA also contains codons that will encode for specific amino acids. A methylated cap is found at the 5' end. Translation initiation begins when the small subunit of the ribosome attaches to the cap and moves to the translation initiation site. tRNA is another key molecule. It contains an anticodon that is complementary to the codon to which it binds. The first codon is typically AUG. Attached to the end of the tRNA is the corresponding amino acid. Methionine corresponds to the AUG codon. The large subunit of the ribosome now binds to create the peptidyl, or P site, and the aminoacyl, or A site. The first tRNA occupies the P site. The second tRNA enters the A site and is complementary to the second mRNA codon. The methionine is then transferred to the A site amino acid, the first tRNA exits, the ribosome moves along, and the next tRNA enters. These are the basic steps of elongation. As elongation continues, the growing peptide is continually transferred to the A site tRNA, the ribosome moves along the mRNA, and new tRNAs enter. When a stop codon is encountered in the A site, a release factor enters the A site and translation is terminated. When termination is reached, the ribosome dissociates and the newly formed protein is released.
Now, messenger RNA, natural one now, is responsible for making the stuff that stops you from having cancer, stopping the telomerase from keep duplicating. Now, while I'm saying this, some of you are thinking back that they tried to interfere by using the M stuff, ribonucleic acids, they were M before that, and they were interfering with that chromosome, with the telomerase. And this is the reason why, besides all the other sub-factors, they were interfering with the telomerase. And because of that, cancer started to form in many, many people around the world. Not only that, but the people couldn't produce enough enzymes so that they could prevent sickness and disease and heart attacks and so forth. So once they interfere with the telomerase through, we learned that term, we'll read that article in a moment. Once they interfere, you find that people are not going to be as healthy as they were before. But you see, because people don't know these things, they take what the scientists have told them and echoed over and over again, they take it as gospel. And people like us, well, what do we know? And so you find even people who are believers have gone home early, have punched their clock out because they trusted the wrong people. So I'm just mentioning this to you so that you are aware of the damage because of a small piece of what God made in you, so beautifully engineered, never to be interfered with. Now, that NCBI article tells us this. Conversely, that word, mediated ablation of telomeres, occurs through direct removal and damage. These studies witness an upregulation of repair mechanisms as well as decreases in both cellular health and viability. Now, in recent times, we have seen how agents of darkness convince people to implant that. So, for those of you who have not allowed that chromosome to be interfered with through that thing they were giving, you have no idea what God has really spared you from. Besides the loss of your spirit, the changing of character of a person, it has spared the life of every human being who heard his voice. Because in a short space of time after that incident, 1.5, 2 years ago, you're going to start to see an exponential rate of death and sickness and disease and heart attacks, strokes and cancers. That's why you find so many people suddenly they die of cancer and you don't know why. So when your telomere is interfered with, you cannot make proteins that protect your body from any sickness, diseases that come inside. I can't use that word. Now when we look at all the nutraceuticals that people have been taking, the supplements and all these things, because the telomere is too short, can't make them anymore, so they're taking all these vitamins and all these tablets and everything to enhance the body, you find that the death rate in people are getting higher and higher, and the age of people is getting younger and younger. This is an article that confirms that. Cancer in young adults may be more common than in the past, but developing cancer as a young adult is still not as common as developing cancer as an older adult. And the NCBI article tells us short telomeres confer risk of degenerative diseases. Chronic psychological stress can lead to disease through many pathways, and research from in vitro studies to human longitudinal studies have pointed to stress-induced telomere damage as an important pathway. Now, I'm going to give you this next section that we perhaps went over a little while ago in brief, but I'm giving it to you because after it, I want to show you its relevance in me preaching this message to you. So just follow me. There's a lot I'm giving you, but it's basic to understand. But I'm going to add something here, and I want you to pay attention to it because it will become more relevant when I finish. Now the Nature article tells us this. The genetic code includes 64 possible permutations or combinations of 3-letter nucleotide sequences that can be made from the 4 nucleotides. Now, you know what nucleotides are? It's those letters that we see: guanine, G, adenine, cytosine, and the T. So these 4 nucleotide bases, when they make combinations with each other, they make different enzymes and different proteins just by having those combinations. Now, of the 64 codons, those are called codons, 61 represents amino acids and 3 are stop signals. So there's a stop signal involved, there are 3 of them, and 61 are the ones responsible for making the peptide amino acid chains, which are the enzymes and the proteins. And TAA, for example, is a stop codon. So the combination of TAA, those 3 nucleotides, they are responsible. That combination is for making, is for the stop signal, for making the telomere stop making anything. Now, glutamine is a protein that is responsible for removing of waste from the body and vital in immune function. For example, the article tells us the codon CAG represents the amino acid glutamine. So that combination of cytosine, adenine and guanine, that combination CAG, when that combines, that codon, that combination makes glutamine, and glutamine is responsible for helping you to fight any infections that you get naturally. It also is responsible for removing the waste products, the toxic things from your body. And when CAG is not activated, then you will start to have more waste products in your body, more toxins. That's how people start to get a lot of headaches, because too much of toxins, and they start to get sick more regularly because the CAG combination is switched off. Now, there's other things in fact that glutamine does is important for removing excess ammonia, a common waste product in the body. It also helps your immune system function and may be needed for normal brain function and digestion. You can usually get enough glutamine without taking a supplement because your body makes it and you get some in your diet. Now, one of the switches, the codon switches that can be switched on to make these things is in the video clip that I played a few weeks ago. I want you to watch this again.
There are 64 possible codes of amino acids in our DNA structure made from 4 elements: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. By any means of logic, we should have all 64 codes activated within our DNA structure. Yet we presently only have 20 active codes.
And of these 64 possibilities, it appears that only 20 of these codes are turned on right now for us, the 20 amino acids. There is a switch that turns off and turns on where those coding sites lie, and that the switch for that turning off and turning on is what we call emotion. And this is the first time that we've ever seen the patterns of emotion directly physically linked to human genetic material. Well, fear is a long, slow wave of emotion. So this wave of fear is a long, slow wave and touches relatively few sites on this DNA. So an individual living in fear is limited to the number of antennae that they have available to them, whereas an individual living in the pattern of love, this is love in DNA, you can see it's a higher frequency, shorter wavelength. We have many more potential sites for coding along that genetic pattern. This information, this is amazing. This is the first time we've ever had a hard digital link between emotion and genetics.
Your emotions, your vibrations, your frequencies can help to activate more codons by creating better frequencies that are shorter and can reach more codons and can switch them on. But there are other emotions that can keep them switched off. And that's why people who worry too much, who carry too much of stress in their lives, who go to bed worrying about their daughter's life and how she's getting on, and that the son is not working, and they're going to hospital next week, what the doctor is going to say, and how they're going to meet their bond at the end of the month, and how they're going to go to work when everybody doesn't like them. So they sit with these worries and these fears, and these fears create an emotion which creates a vibration which doesn't activate the codons, which means that your body doesn't make enough glutamine, for example. I'm just giving you one example. There's thousands of combinations that make different products and enzymes. But just one example. That's why you see people that carry too much of worry for too long, besides getting possessed, their skin sags, they age quicker, because the telomeres keep getting used up, trying to function. the essential proteins and enzymes that keeps the skin young and the body and the organs young, they cannot function. They switched off. And we need to switch them back on. And the only way to do that is to have emotions that switch them on. And one of the emotions that we learned is the emotion of love and peace. Let me put it this way. Letting God be. Because no intervention on your part, however well-meaning, there are certain things that sitting and worrying about does not change. Yet, it does the opposite on your own body and your lifespan. And that's what the devil is counting on. For you to shorten your telomere in a quicker amount of time so that you age faster, so that your body cannot produce the enzymes required for protecting yourself from sickness and disease, so that it cannot produce anything to make your heart function, because you need certain chemicals for your brain to work. And when those chemicals are in short supply, like serotonin for example, which is made there by the telomere, you cannot think properly. You make bad decisions. For your heart muscle, you need chemicals. You need a combination of things. And you cannot produce it because you're worrying. The codons are switched off. And so you take supplements from the outside, which causes their own damage. So although you're trying to sort one problem out, medication has side effects and it causes other problems. And so there's a chain reaction. And it all centers around fear, which I shared in my book. I think it is, that it's the grandfather of worry. For all negative emotions, fear is the grandfather of every negative emotions. You're fearing tomorrow, you're fearing this and you're fearing that, and you're sitting worried at home. How is this going to work out? And you're carrying this on your shoulders. Meanwhile, what's going on underground is that your codons are switched off. You're getting sicker and sicker and older, and the telomere is getting shorter and shorter by the day. And you do not realize it until it's now unfixable. Love is the grandfather of all positive emotions. Now let's read 2 Timothy. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. I mean, these people knew nothing about science. They were just going with what God put inside of them, something simple. But let me tell you, when you read the Bible in that simplicity, sometimes it doesn't hit home. So I took you through an understanding of why these scriptures have been put in place, so that you can have a clearer understanding of the danger you put yourself in by not letting God be God. Philippians chapter 4 says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made to know. That's all you have to do. You worry about something? Lord, I leave this at your feet. I know it's easy to say. I know it's very hard to do. I'm not making light of these things that you are going through. I'm just showing you a pathway to full recovery. In other words, let God untangle that lace so that He can provide a solution rather than you. You see, if you want to physically do something about it, then do. But if there's simply nothing, you've done everything, all you have to do now is leave it to God, then that's what you do. And let God finish up the work. You know, there's so many things in my own personal life that I've done everything possible to get something accomplished and done or resolved. And there's nothing more left for me to do. That's the time, sometimes it's hardest to let God be God, I can tell you that now. Because you feel that maybe let me think hard enough, I can find a way out for this. But then something inside of me tells me, just let it go. Just leave it and let God be God. And God generally, He comes through for me in ways that I didn't expect. And I know that God has no favorites. So if you trust Him and leave it to Him, if He can untangle that 300 trillion or 30 trillion meters of cord inside of you in your chromosomes to allow codons to function. I know He can do that for your simple life. Now, when you vibrate at a frequency of peace and let God be God, you activate codons in you that you don't even know is happening. You start to get better. Even in the hospital, if you get sick and you have this positiveness in you, I am leaving everything to God, your body heals itself quicker. A person who just gives up, oh, I want to see all my grandchildren, I'm going to die now, you'll die very quick. You have to stay there with a positive mind. Lord, I leave everything. Your body fights itself. It has the built-in mechanism. Not only that, we did share a couple of weeks ago that when you broadcast a positive frequency, it has a positive effect not only on your body, but on things outside of you. Things that were like a bad luck that was happening on your items, breaking down, your car, it starts to become positive. People around you start to have better fortune. I'm using that term loosely. Where things don't just go wrong, it starts to go correct. But all it takes is for you to have faith in God that He can untangle this mess. And the principle of least effort says, when you are at peace with anything that's going on, this is a worldly person telling you that somehow it works in your favor.
Once there was a writer who happened to specialize in crafting thought-provoking essays on various subjects. Through hard work and seemingly endless creativity, she managed to publish numerous pieces that captivated her readers. However, one day she found herself in a creative slump, unable to find any inspiration for her next writing endeavor. She contemplated different topics, but none seemed to resonate. She scoured her bookshelves and searched the internet, but to no avail. A sense of panic crept in, as she feared she had exhausted her ideas or fallen victim to writer's block. Yet, after taking a deep breath, she made the conscious choice to let it go for a while and divert her attention to other pursuits. Strangely enough, while strolling through a serene forest, without any intention of conjuring up a subject or even thinking about her writing aspirations, an idea unexpectedly came to mind. And thus, she came to realize that when she ceased trying so hard, what she was looking for arose effortlessly. The writer experienced a curious paradox. She wanted to be productive, but the more she tried, the less she could. Only when she ceased caring and lifted the enormous pressure of needing to be productive off of her shoulders was she able to write again. So striving and effort do not always get what we want. Moreover, these things can work against us. What's going on here? Author Aldous Huxley first described the law of reverse effect, saying that, and I quote, "The harder we try with a conscious will to do something, the less we shall succeed." End quote. So, could it really be that when we stop consciously trying to succeed, we increase our chances of success? Will results come once we stop caring? This video explores the law of reverse effect, also known as the law of reverse effort.
Here is something very intriguing, beloved, and you have to admire Jesus's subtle way of bringing it to us. But first, let's look at the science. Science website tells us, whereas the consensus sequence for animals was CACCAUG, that for plants, AACAAUGC. Both the structural and functional findings suggest that the factors which select AUG initiated codons in plants and animals differ significantly. So wait. Plants work in the very same way that humans work. Everything is magnificently engineered and designed. Just like animals, plants also have telomere that makes proteins for the plant to live as long as the plant lives. Another article, as seen in mammals, telomeres in plants are maintained by telomerase. Same thing. Active telomerase is detected in organs and tissues containing highly dividing meristem cells such as seedlings, root tips, young and middle-aged leaves, flowers and floral buds. Now let us see what the Creator told us in Matthew 6. Do not worry. Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on it. Put on. Is not life more than food and body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. The birds also have telomere. For they know neither sow nor reap nor gather into the barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? In other words, a single hour to his life. You know, in a cryptic way, Jesus, knowing all things, was trying to tell us that instead of adding 1 hour to your life by worrying, you actually subtract 1 hour to your life just by worrying. It's amazing. The cryptic messages sent to us that science is only uncovering now. And then Jesus goes on further. So why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the valley, of the field. How they grow. They neither toil nor spin, nor have intercession meetings. They don't come for service. They don't have praise and worship. They don't have crying intercession and mumbling and dumbling and talking in tongues. They don't call people to pray with them, other flowers. They do nothing. They don't worry about whether the sun is going to shine the next day, whether the winds are going to blow them off. They don't worry about anything. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Now if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of so much worry and little faith? Jesus, you see, he was trying to tell us that there's a mechanism in lilies, in flowers, that the telomerase is there. And they are able to provide every nutrient and protein that a plant needs, that a flower needs. The lily doesn't have to worry about it. And because the lily doesn't worry, the clothes that come out from the design is magnificent. And Solomon in all his wealth could never dress himself up as beautiful as a lily in the field. Verse 31, Jesus says, therefore do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Least effort, most result. Jeremiah 29. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Worry is actually a demonstration of fear. Fear that you're going to die, you're not going to make it, you're not going to be able to pay rent. Fear that you're going to get divorced. Fear that your daughter is going to have no home. Fear that, things are it's just fear. It is an enemy to faith. And God says, just put all that fear down right now. Let it go. Let the shoulders hang. Leave it down and give it to Jesus. And now you have to pretend. And I say pretend. You have to behave as if I left it there now. God has to take care. And I want you to pick up your smile. Let the vibrations and emotions in you change so that your telomeres can have life. So that you can have life. The devil will find every opportunity to stir up negative emotions in you by causing people to hurt you, by causing things to go wrong so you get anxious and you start to worry. And I want you to take everything in your stride and say, Lord, devil, I know that's you. I'm not going to worry. I'm leaving it to God. Devil, I recognize you there. You are in that workplace and you're causing them Because everything inside of people is caused by the enemy. And you causing them to say things that's making me uncomfortable. I'm just going to smile my way. And you find that their telomeres get short when you don't get affected. And you'll wipe them out. God will use their own selves to wipe them out. And you know the devil hates them anyway. So he'll wipe them out. So all I want you to do is just be smiley. Just have your heart burdened less. And create an atmosphere, because you know what the devil's plan is. He knows how you made better than you know how you made. Well, not anymore. You seem to, I'm giving you stuff. If I can give you a piece of godly advice, when you are having attacks and darts come at you by people who are supposed to love you, people who you trusted especially, I want you to stop and think. It's not them. It's the principalities and powers behind them, because they know what they're targeting. They're targeting specifically, and I don't mean to make light of this, your telomere. I want you to stop and think and rein in those emotions. You know that Bible scripture that tells us, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. So when those thoughts start to come, stop, think, rein in those emotions. And leave it to God and start. Never let anger become your friend. Hatred, unforgiveness become your friend, because you only kill yourself. Can I ask you, can I pray with you and allow you to find peace in God? And let us pray. Let's take communion and pray together. Let us pray. Father, with wine in one hand, bread in another, in an instant, it becomes your blood and your flesh. As we partake in these emblems, we ask for your Spirit to enrich us, revive us. Let our spirits be uplifted. Give us a boost inside, Lord, so that we may draw closer to you and have more spiritual strength than ever before. Cover every one of your children as they partake. Let them find peace that they never had before. Cover them now, Lord, all of them, in Jesus' name. Amen. Let us eat the flesh. Let us drink his blood. Thank you, Father. I pray and bestow all God's blessing upon every child of God that is listening to me right now. I cover you and your children in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you once again for joining me. I want you to have yourselves a beautiful, blessed and peaceful week. Let love reign in your life. God bless. See you next week.